With The Flash Season 4 just on the way, I'm super excited to go back into The Flash Season 3 and dig deep into it. Are you excited for The Flash Season 4? Let me know in the comments. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for The Flash Season 3. I think The Flash is probably my favorite CW superhero show right now. I love The Flash. And way back when Season 1 started, the thing that made me really love this character was how light-hearted and carefree, joyful, and hopeful Barry Allen was. Like, he just wasn't this dark, brooding, angsty character. He was full of light and was fun, and it just made the character so fun. And it's one of the things that made The Flash so awesome. Now, as the show has progressed, he started to carry more and more burdens, and he's been getting more and more angsty. And what's interesting to me about Season 3 is, one of my primary frustrations with it was how full of angst Barry Allen was, and it kind of drove me nuts. But then, as I took a step back, kind of looked at it as a whole, and looked at the story it was trying to tell, the angstiness of Barry Allen stopped bothering me because it just came to having a brand new meaning. When you go back and you look at Season 2 of The Flash, Barry Allen goes into the Speed Force and has this encounter with the Speed Force, and what he really learns is how to come to terms with his mother's death. Even though he could travel through time, he's not a god, and changing the timeline would be a bad thing, and he comes to terms with his mom's death, he comes to peace with it, and after that experience, it's like this heavy burden is lifted off his shoulders, and we go back to that light, carefree version of Barry Allen that we've really come to love. And then just a few episodes later, Zoom captures Barry's dad and kills Barry's dad in front of Barry's face.
This is what's gonna make you just like me. Your mother and I love you. No!
Even though Barry defeated Zoom, in a sense he didn't, because he fell right for it.
There you go, Flash! Use your anger, just like I did.
And Season 3 is kind of the fruit of that, because he let all that darkness and bitterness deep down into his heart in that moment. I mean, it was a painful moment. But I think one of the interesting things that he let into his heart at that moment was pride. Because he had learned how to humble himself with the Speed Force and be at peace with his mother's death. And then the end of Season 2 is he rebels against that. He decides he's taking matters into his own hands, and he goes and he creates Flashpoint when he goes back and he saves his mother's life. This whole thing kind of reminds me of 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. I used to read that as these two separate commands. Command 1, humble yourself. Command 2, give all your worries and cares to God because he cares about you. But recently, I was listening to a message and they pointed out that really that verse is one solid sentence and it's one solid command. The command, humble yourself. And in humbling yourself, here's the result, the casting of your cares on God. And I found that to be a very interesting thing, because then what that talks about is pride being this root in our lives. And this root produces a fruit, and pride produces this root of angst, anxiety, and all that stuff. And when you look at the picture of Barry Allen in Season 3, because of his pride to take all these matters into his own hands, what we see in Barry's life, the fruit manifested, all this anxiety, carrying the weight of the world, and he is filled with hate and bitterness. Now, he has this inner war and struggle going on because he's still good, but we just see all this other fruit, all these weeds, all these bad things being produced in his life. So when we get to Season 3, he lives in this paradise that he created for himself, only to find that it's not a paradise. So now he has to go back and set the timeline back right. And he seemingly does that, only he finds the timeline is now not exactly right because he keeps playing God. He keeps on rebelling and he keeps on trying to change time. So even though he set the timeline back kind of in general, what he found is Diggle on Team Arrow had a daughter named Sarah. But now she is erased from existence altogether and replaced with this little baby boy. And then it turns out that Joe and Iris, who had forgiven each other over a matter in Season 2, were now holding that matter against each other in Season 3. So their relationship was all but destroyed as we get into Season 3, and they won't even talk to each other. And Cisco's brother, who was alive in the alternate timeline, is now dead by a drunk driver accident. And these are just some of the small changes that Barry found out real quick, and these became heavy burdens resting on his shoulders. So what does he try to do? He tries to run back in time and fix it all yet again. This time, Jay Garrick catches him out of the Speed Force.
Whenever you go back in time, it breaks. You can try to fix it, but no matter how hard you try, it's never going to be exactly how it was.
We are not gods, Barry. We cannot just change things willy-nilly. You have to learn to accept your mistakes and move on. In a sense, he's saying, learn how to forgive yourself and move forward. Now, Barry hears that to the point that he won't time travel anymore to mess up time, but he doesn't really forgive himself. In fact, I feel like as you watch season 3, he's spending a lot of time in overdrive, and he's trying to make up for his mistakes. And that's pride. That's him hanging on to it. Even though he's not going back in time, he's still clinging to the idea he has to pay his penance. He has to make things right. He has to go in overtime to be all this. And all it does is it continues to pile on burden upon burden, but it piles upon mistake upon mistake. Because as they fight this villain Savitar, what Barry ends up doing is he gets the Philosopher's Stone and he hurtles that stone into the Speed Force thinking that now he has defeated Savitar. But Savitar is trapped in the Speed Force and he needed the Philosopher's Stone to get out, so Barry handed Savitar the key to breaking out of the Speed Force and now being in our reality. Which opened up a whole nother set of angst for the whole second half of season 3, which was Savitar killing Iris, where Barry saw that in the future, and now he's spending this entire time going in overdrive, doing everything that he can to try to change the future. You know, he didn't even propose to Iris out of love. He proposed to Iris because he didn't see an engagement ring on her finger. So he thought, if I could just change every little thing, I mean, yeah, I love her anyway, so if I could just change all of this stuff, then this won't happen. And so second half of season 3 is his mission, while not going back in time, to do everything he can to make all these little changes to change the overall picture in the future. In other words, it's his pride. It's him doing everything that he can, and he's doing everything from this root of bitterness, this root of hate, and this root of angst. Yeah, he's warring with it, but it's there, but it's not producing the right results, and they keep on hurtling towards the death of Iris, even to this point where Barry and Iris almost break up because Iris is like, you proposed to me not because you loved me, but you proposed to me because you just wanted to change time. But then later he proposes to her the right way, singing to her out of a heart of love. So slowly Barry begins to have a turnaround here. Now what I loved about season 3 is kind of this existential picture that we get of good Barry versus bad Barry. Because Savitar, Barry's nemesis, is Barry Allen. It is a future Barry Allen. So literally, we're watching good Barry Allen war with his dark side of bad Barry Allen.
Like I told you from the beginning, I am the future Flash.
But this dark side was created out of hate, bitterness, and pride. It had to do with the fact that when Iris died and Barry went to the future, he saw that he wasn't there for Joe, he wasn't there for his friends, and he withdrew into himself, into his own bitterness, and he withdrew. So we see that this pride and this stuff, it's beginning to take him over. And as this pride and stuff is beginning to take him over, in a desperate attempt to destroy Savitar, he creates these time remnants of himself somewhere in the future. And all those time remnants are killed except one who's kind of mangled and mutilated, and that's the one that lives, and that's the one that becomes Savitar. So now you have this version of Barry that feels discarded and made for one purpose, and that is to be discarded. You have a Barry Allen that's dealing with the pain of Barry, the death of his mother, the death of his father, the guilt of changing the timeline and not everything being set back exactly right. You have this Barry that is now carrying all of that, and now he becomes this dark, twisted version of himself who has one goal. And you know what that goal is? He's setting himself up as a god.
Finally, to be a god.
This is now starting to sound like Satan, who in his pride wanted to take God's throne because he thought he could do it better, and that pride became Satan's fall. Now he's starting to have a lot in common with the devil because it's this pride. He wants to be a god. He wants to be the god of speed. This is how he ends up dealing with all of this stuff. Now, where Barry begins to wake up is we get to the end of season 3, and HR, using his little, I don't know, face changer thingy that he has from his planet, and he makes himself to be Iris and makes Iris to be him, and so he dies in place of Iris. And in dying in place of Iris, this kind of snaps Barry out of this selfless sacrifice, the fact that his girl's alive. And as he begins to snap out of this, he begins to come to a realization. So yes, the time paradox is about to catch up to Savitar, and he's going to vanish from time because now Barry doesn't have this horrendous death of Iris experience that continues to propel him into darkness to become that dark side Barry. So yes, this evil Barry is about to disappear in a time paradox, but he's still there for a few more hours and he could do a lot of damage. But Barry realizes, I've been fighting him with hate and bitterness. I fought Reverse Flash with hate and bitterness. I fought Zoom with hate and bitterness. And look where that's got me. And I've been fighting this guy with hate and bitterness. And I'm only feeding who he is because he's me. So now Barry makes a new choice. And he starts to show compassion and forgiveness to his dark side. But the part I want to pay attention to in the season finale of Season 3 is this. So after Barry defeats Savitar and realizes Savitar won't accept this forgiveness because this future Barry is so evil and so dark, he's hardened his heart to the point that he can't receive this love, this forgiveness, and this mercy anymore, which that in itself was a scary future for Barry to look upon. Once they finally defeat Savitar, there's one last thing that happens, and it is the Speed Force. Now that there's nobody held in the Speed Force, no speedster held in it, it begins to lose its balance, and the energy and power bleeds into our world, and basically it's gonna rip our world to shreds. Unless a speedster gives themselves over to it and stays inside the Speed Force, then that balance is restored and the world will live. And Barry's the guy who surrenders himself to that. What amazes me is, at the very end of this is like the final, greatest, humbling moment of Barry's life. Now, when you're watching this, Iris is tore up, Joe is tore up, all the characters are tore up. But when you look at Barry's face in this scene, you notice that Barry's kind of got this great big smile on his face. You notice that Barry is so zen about this. Like, it's one of the hardest decisions in his life. You can tell that there's a part of him that is sad about this, and he's sad about leaving Iris. He's sad about it. But there's this other part of him that is just in sheer and utter relief. And it's because at the very end here, as he has humbled himself to the Speed Force, it has rolled off that angst and those burdens and those cares and that humbling. That stuff has rolled off. So what he did is he took care of the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem was pride. And the pride was a root producing all this bad fruit. And when he humbled himself, it changed the fruit that his life was producing. So he willingly stepped into the Speed Force. There's one thing he says here in this scene that I firmly disagree with.
It started with my mistake, with Flashpoint. This is my penance. This is my redemption.
No, that's still him hanging on to it, in my opinion, to pay his own penance. Now, we're supposed to get the picture that he's finally humbled himself, he's finally let go, and this is all good. But I don't buy that is his penance, because honestly, what we've found through all Season 3 is he can't pay his penance, which is the truth of humanity. There's a penance we owe, and no matter what we do, we can't pay it on our own, period. We just can't pay it. Barry Allen, all through Season 3, can never pay his penance, and that's the whole lesson he's learned. And now he's saying, this is my penance and this is my redemption. I think the truth of that statement would have been this. Jesus already paid our penance because we can't pay it. There's nothing about that we can do. But he paid our penance on our behalf. And as a free gift, offers us redemption. The only work left on our part is to swallow our pride and receive the free gift. That to me would have been a lot more of an accurate ending to this. But I think the picture is there. He humbled himself, and in humbling himself, he took care of the bad root, pride, and the angst, and those burdens, and that bitterness was rolled off. When he took care of it at the heart, it rolled off. So that's what I think when I watch that. I think of 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7, and the truth of what it means to humble yourself under God's hand because he cares about us and casting our anxieties on him. So what did you think of Season 3 of The Flash? Be sure to let me know in the comments, which CW show are you most excited about this fall? Be sure to let me know that. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Next to the subscribe button is the bell. Click that bell so you're notified the moment I drop new videos. Check out my other theological analyses, movie reviews, trailer reactions, ranking videos, and all kinds of other great things here on this channel. I'm Durbin. Thank you for checking out Durbania.